I'm Dr. K with modernmedicinewoman.com, and today Jennifer Stone is going to be speaking with us. Jennifer is a researcher, a licensed acupuncturist, and editor-in-chief of JASA, the Journal of the American Society of Acupuncturists. She is assistant research faculty for the Indiana University School of Medicine, Department of Anesthesia and Pediatric Oncology. Welcome, Jen, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We're talking about COVID-19, and in the biomedical model in our healthcare systems, we often focus on symptom management and less on prevention. And we have right now a low supply of ventilators and medical equipment. We don't have enough protective equipment for our healthcare providers. And so it makes sense to focus on the things that we can do at home, the prevention techniques that may reduce transmission of this virus and decrease the severity of symptoms. So as a researcher, do you have any evidence or know of any evidence that's been collected that gives credibility to some of the simple preventative solutions?
Well, yes. I mean, the number one best solution is the one that we have the most evidence on, and that is quarantining and social distancing. And that's why everyone's going crazy about that. And we have the evidence from all the other countries that have done it. So that's someplace where we actually do have some evidence, even though this has only been, not even 4 months. This is like a 3 month long, less than 3 months long bug that's been out there. It's really new. So we just don't have a lot of evidence yet.
So the things that we used to do, or like my grandparents, when I had a sore throat, they'd have me gargle with warm salt water. Gargling with an antiseptic. Is there a scientific explanation for why that can help prevent viruses and pathogens?
It's funny. When you and I talked about this yesterday, the first thing I thought of was the experiments my kids did in school, where they gargled, they took swabs of their mouth and then gargled with mouthwash for 10 seconds and then a minute, and then measured how much bacteria growth was destroyed by the mouthwash. And sure enough, the longer you keep it in your mouth, the more effective it is. But then after talking yesterday, I went online and I went on PubMed. That's my favorite place to find credible scientific literature. And I put in gargling mouthwash, gargling for flu. And there are a couple of studies. And what's really funny is there's 2 studies. One of them was a Japanese study, and it actually found that gargling with water was more effective than gargling with, they didn't use mouthwash in the study. They used iodine. But they found that gargling with water was actually more effective than gargling with iodine, which is strange, funny. Not sure if those results would be the same if you did the study again.
And it would be interesting because, that's where my biggest interest is in preserving medicinal wisdom from centuries ago. And, those things that have been passed on from generation to generation that, that we do without always knowing really why and scientifically how it works. It seems like using an antiseptic would make a bigger difference than just water. I'll make sure to post all of the resources that you're sharing on the website as well. But that a lot of the information that I've gotten from colleagues in China and in Europe with prevention recommendations, they recommend to gargle with an antiseptic for 30 seconds. So you would say that based on some of the research, there is some evidence showing that that may help.
Definitely. And I'd like I'd like to speak a little bit about the information that we are getting from our parents and grandparents and great grandparents. And in Chinese medicine, we're using information that we've gotten from thousands and thousands of years ago. And the things that work, we keep passing on and keep using. And the things that don't work, we stop talking about them. We stop using them. So all of those old-fashioned home remedies that Grandma talked about, they're still being talked about because they work. There may not be a bunch of evidence behind it because, quite frankly, it's not as sexy, so to speak, as stem cell research, acupuncture for stem cell research. Everybody's interested in reading about that and funding that. But nobody's interested in reading about gargling for flu and funding it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And let's talk about the viral fever. That's another, I think that that's another topic that 100 years ago, if you started to get a fever, people would take a hot bath or they would, get in a bed with a whole bunch of blankets and try to sweat it out. That's something that in the last couple generations, we've been taking NSAIDs and different medication to cut the fever. But in this case of COVID-19, we're seeing that actually makes it worse. So that thermal effect of the fever may be better for survival and shortening the duration of the virus. Would you say that is true? And again, is there any research that you have that you can kind of share specific to the fever?
There's an awful lot in lay literature. But again, let's talk about history. We know for many, many cultures, they use steam rooms and hot baths and saunas to bring up the body temperature and induce sweat. And the idea is if you induce sweat, it kind of helps the bug get out of your system. So according to traditional Chinese medicine theory, we believe that a cold or a flu enters the body from the outside world, like a windy, cold day in the winter, and it travels in deeper into the body. And the Chinese medicine doctors come up with different strategies using acupuncture, moxibustion, herbs to pull the cold or the flu back out of the body again. And historically, many other cultures have used that theory and that process to help induce sweat to help get rid of a cold or a flu faster. There are saunas, there's steam rooms. In the Middle East, people put herbs in the steam room, so they breathe the aromatic oils from the herbs while they're in the steam room, and it helps induce the sweat. But for the COVID-19, we do have to make sure that we don't heat the body up too much. Some fevers are getting as high as 103, and that is too high to get into a sauna and try to induce sweat.
Right. And so we have to be really careful. It is going to be important to, to reach out to a medical provider that you trust. And it's difficult because right now our physicians are basically being told to stay home or to work in the ICUs or be available for emergencies only. There are a lot of telehealth services, nursing lines that are open and available, but it's these simple things where that initial phase, that's one of the things that I think in traditional Chinese medicine is so interesting. There's this idea that you know when your immune system is down or when you start to get that initial symptom, that's when you start to fight back. So often, we're used to taking medication or letting it just kind of get worse. And that's what we're seeing with COVID-19, that it's those initial symptoms is when you want to implement strategies to help fight back. right away, whether it's getting more rest, taking a hot bath before that fever gets out of control, taking herbal medicine from a board certified herbalist, implementing dietary changes, these things that have been used for centuries to treat pathogens.
Right. And it's important to not believe everything that you read on the internet. I've seen a lot of really crazy things going around, conspiracy theory stuff to taking colloidal silver for the COVID-19, and colloidal silver is something that we've actually found is harmful in even normal doses that people were taking it 10 years ago.
As a researcher and clinician with 3 decades of experience, what COVID-19 resources can you share that are trustworthy and have a really great, credible source?
Well, the most credible, trustworthy source is PubMed, PubMed. And if you Google search it, click on PubMed, you'll see a pink strip at the top. And at the bottom of the pink strip, it says special research on COVID-19. And if you click there, you can find all the research that's happening through the NIH. And I did a special search for TCM research, and I found 6 studies or 6 papers that are on Medline at this time, that are on PubMed at this time. But they were all, none of them were real clinical trials because we just haven't had enough time to do real clinical trials. The one that I found most interesting was a Chinese herb formula that they've been using an awful lot in China on COVID-19 patients because it worked on SARS patients. So there are a couple of papers talking about that, but it's too early to see if it's going to work on the COVID-19.
So, and I'll make sure to link all of the resources on modernmedicinewoman.com. But we're going to see more and more information and research from traditional Chinese medicine, definitely with the herbs being used at hospitals throughout China, even in Europe, they're starting to implement that. And we have over 30,000 acupuncturists and board certified herbalists in the United States that have this knowledge, have the formulas, and can really help to offer some support as far as symptom management for what people are experiencing. So when we're talking about acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, we know that this has been practiced by physicians for centuries to treat infectious disease. Do you have any research findings supporting the use of acupuncture and moxibustion to support the immune system? From doing some research on my own, I've saw a lot of really interesting things on stimulating stomach 36, using moxibustion. Do you have any of that research on hand or can point us to any articles?
There's so much research that's been done on the benefits to the immune system through acupuncture. Moxibustion, not as much. Acupuncture, because when you put a needle into the body and enter it into the skin, the body reacts to that needle because it thinks it's a foreign object, and it ramps up the immune system. So acupuncture is good for the immune system. Some points stimulate more of an immune response than others. Some points are more anti-inflammatory, and inflammation is part of the immune response. But the best way to do that is to go to PubMed and in the search bar at the top, type in acupuncture immune, and you will end up looking through thousands and thousands of studies on humans, on animals, and at Indiana University, we just published a study in Cell magazine on using acupuncture to mobilize, wake up stem cells. And the stem cells have been found to balance out the immune system. That research is being done by my faculty supervisor, Dr. Fletcher White, IU School of Medicine. It's pretty fantastic.
Thank you for sharing that. And I will do a lot of the research, and I'll post a lot of those sources on the website too, just to make it easier for everybody. But thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people that are not researchers may not have that education. It's really hard to know where to go and know who to trust. And so I appreciate you being on today and sharing your expertise, and appreciate it so much, Jen.
Thank you. I appreciate you for sharing it with the world.
Jen is one of my mentors that I've known for decades, and in assisting in her clinic for almost a year and a half, it amazed me the combination that she was able to blend both in the practice of ancient medicine and the system of traditional Chinese medicine with biomedicine, but also Jen knows how to create tinctures. She was making her own medicine in her clinic. And I think that's one of the reasons I love having you on here, Jen, because that information is being lost from generation to generation. And in the schools that we go to, we learn, how to prepare formulas with already prepared herbs. But what happens when we can't get those? What happens when our supplies are out? That's what we're going to be sharing on this podcast: how to be a healer in your own household, using the things that you have. Because when you're stuck at home, you can't go out, you can't go to your doctor, or you're scared to because you don't want to get the virus. This is the most important time to be able to preserve that information and share it. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and being such a huge influence on my life. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Karina.
For more information or to schedule a consult with one of our licensed medical providers, go to modernmedicinewoman.com.